Are we
recording? We are
recording?
now.
Oh, it's just to make sure, we said this once before for our newcomers, to make sure it's okay that we record this. We do this for educational purposes. Great, thank you. So just, we're gonna do some check-ins, like, how you doing, where you're from, maybe a brief one sentence about how you're feeling going into this class. And I will start just calling people to get the ball rolling. And Claudia, would you start?
Yeah, hi.
Go with the facilitators first. Just sorry. Would it be
Oh,
okay? Just that we introduce ourselves, just so people know
sure,
who we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, there. Go ahead, Edwin.
I'll start. Yeah, I'm Edwin Rudge from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. Really glad everybody's here. Been working on empathy, the topic of empathy for about 14 years, and been working with Empathy Circles. Totally thrilled about spreading the word about how to use this simple practice. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Lou?
So I'm Lou Zweier. I'm from Northern California in the US. I'm an educator and a filmmaker, and I teach conflict resolution, communication, and leadership skills. And I've been working with Edwin for about 2.5 years doing Empathy Circle work. And I'm really, really happy to be here. Every time I do one of these classes and people come on and I see all the faces, it just really fills me up. I'm so happy to have you all here. And I'm grateful that you're all here and interested in learning about this.
Great, thanks. Anne?
Yeah, I'm Anne. I live in England on the coast of the Southwest Peninsula. And I've been involved in working with Empathy Circles for the last 1 to 2 years. And I'm really happy to be here. Again, it's just such a joy. So glad to be part of this training process.
Great, thank you, Anne. And Dean?
Hi, I'm Dean from Southwest United Kingdom as well. I'm been involved with the Empathy Circle process for about 1 year now, and it's been a revelation and very powerful insight into how we can deepen the conversation and work together for the new beginnings that we want to create. Thank you.
And I'm Bill Filler. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been working with Edwin in a bunch of venues on the street for about 3 years. I'm a retired special education teacher dealing with severely emotionally disturbed children, none of which I see here today. So welcome everybody, and let's continue on. And now Claudia, sorry for the interruption.
So I'm Claudia. I'm in the East Bay near San Francisco, and very happy to be here. I couldn't think of anything better to be doing today, taking up as much time as possible. I don't want to think about what's going on in the outside world right now.
Okay.
And
yes.
It's just too hard. And I've been doing empathy or restorative justice or mediation and conflict resolution, mainly with SEEDS, which is a volunteer organization here. And I've told Edwin I was going to do this, and I finally had the right time. So very happy to be here.
Great to have you. Nilang, and please correct me if I pronounce your name wrong.
No, that's right pronunciation. And if it's hard, I also go by Neil, whatever
Okay.
makes easy.
Okay.
But hello, everyone. My name is Nilang. I'm a founder of a nonprofit organization called Cultivate Empathy for All that actually focuses on cultivating empathy and implementing the solution that we are facing right now in 21st century. But in my journey, I actually realized that what's even more important is just bringing two opposite sides together in working towards the just and a safe future for the humankind and our planet as a whole. And to build that bridge, what we really need is have two parties listen to each other empathetically. And that's why I'm over here to cultivate that skill set and build the bridge in various different aspects of the challenges that we faced in 21st century. And excited to be over here with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Neil Lewis.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Neil Lewis. I'm based in the north of England, so quite far from Anne and Dean. I'm up sort of near sort of Liverpool, Manchester way. Most people tend to have heard of those cities in the UK, but I live in a little town that probably no one's heard of. I'm the founder of a small training and coaching practice called the Empathy Coach, and it's my mission to bring empathic practice and empathic skills into as many different relationships as I possibly can, and also I'm on a mission to prove that empathy is relevant to every human experience, and I'm constantly putting that theory to the test, and I'm constantly having other people put that theory to the test with me. Never probably been more relevant considering what's happening in the world right now. Lots of conflict. It feels like there's been division, especially in my country. There's been some kind of division, something that's been driving a wedge between us for probably about 4 years properly now, and I've had enough. So yeah, absolutely want to try and resolve some of that conflict and get people working together and finding shared agendas and pushing towards the common good, just for happier, healthier lives. So and I'm really looking forward to being here because I'm always looking for new tools and techniques to bring to my practice. So Empathy Circles will be great for that.
Great, thanks a lot, Neil. I just want to recognize that Jamie just joined us, and Jamie, we're just going around doing introductions right now. Okay, great. Okay, and Karen, welcome back.
Hi there. Hi. Yeah, I'm Karen, also from the UK. I'm in London. And I really resonate with a lot of what's been said already, Neil, what you just described in terms of empathy being so powerful as a process in all sorts of contexts, and for humanity generally, I feel is so important at the moment. I'm a business psychologist by background, yeah, as Neil was saying, also wanting to learn new tools and techniques to add to my practice, and meet new people and engage. And yeah, I hate Zoom normally, but Empathy Circle Zoom is good.
Thank you for your forbearance. Welcome, Rick.
Hello, I'm Rick. I'm in the Hudson Valley region of New York State, and I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, I'm a facilitator of musical play and creative connection. And I've been facilitating empathy circles for maybe a year. And I'm here to deepen my practice and learn more, especially wanting to help bridge the gap between left and right in America. And I am feeling the anxiety today as we are in our day of election. And I'm glad to be with you all here. So thank you.
Great to have you, Rick. Thanks. Rosa.
Hi, so, am I on mute? No.
No.
So I'm in Norfolk in England, and my background, I'm a market gardener and environmental educator, but I've also been doing listening partnerships for about 1.5 years, and various other things that have kind of led me to Empathy Circles, and just how powerful this kind of such a simple tool is for bringing people together. So I facilitate various types of groups, women's circles and sharing circles and things, and would like to bring this into my, to share with others.
Great, thanks. Happy to have you, Rosa. Welcome. Ben.
Thanks. I'm Ben. I'm speaking from Edinburgh in Scotland in the UK. I just noticed, I think, is Anne's sign saying we are a non-violent network, and it put me in touch with a lot of animality. And I imagined the kind of somehow, with the empathy animals kind of gathering, and that tickled me. Enjoyed that kind of image of us. I'm a mediator, conflict coach, counselor. I have a background in psychiatry, and I think one story is in kind of struggling to kind of find people to collaborate in a kind of reinvention of kind of a rehumanized culture. And I love empathy cycling because it seems to be part of that, and so simple, so deep, and really glad to be here.
Thanks, Ben. Welcome. And please, again, correct me, Zainab, correct me, please.
That's perfect. That's perfect, Bill.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
I am Zainab, and I'm originally from India, but based in Fiji right now. I'm an international civil servant, and I see a lot of use for empathy circles in the work that I do. But predominantly, the reason that I'm here sharing space with you now is sort of, I almost want to deepen my own relationship with myself in terms of like just, deeper listening and, getting a sense of the minority voice in yourself and the majority voice in yourself. And with that in mind, I'm really looking to practice more. So yeah, excited to be on this journey with all of y'all.
Great, welcome. Anita. You're muted. There you go.
I've known Edwin for more than a decade. We met actually at a TEDx conference on empathy and compassion in the California Bay Area some time ago when I was working on my doctoral studies. So my background is in education and pedagogy. I was very interested in understanding how we could inspire young people to pursue careers of social change work. So I interviewed social entrepreneurs, and what I discovered across dozens of interviews is that they were all animated by empathy and this need to act on empathy. So for the last 10 years, my pedagogy of empathic action has kind of evolved. I'm now using the term purposeful empathy. So how can we engage in our innate capacity to empathize and leverage that for positive, sustainable social change? Edwin and I have touched base at various points over the last decade, and I'm so delighted he never gave up on me and that he's always been patient with me to be more involved and more engaged in his work. So I'm thrilled to be part of this group pursuing the training. And I've made a commitment to Edwin, given my background in pedagogical design, to help in any way I can to improve and expand the design of the course. So I'm really excited.
Great to have you here, Anita. Jamie.
Hi all, thanks for excusing my lateness. I am in Colorado in the US. So I'm currently working on a master's program in social impact, and specifically I founded a company called Within, which uses a co-liberation model of rehumanization for anti-racist bias work, and I utilize a model I called action, accountability, and healing circles. And so empathy circles just seem to kind of play into that kind of work I do. And I also am a restorative justice facilitator, which goes into the legal side of empathy and healing. So I'm excited to be here and work with y'all.
Great, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go over a short course summarization. I'm going to go through the purpose, the kind of the goals, the aspirational goals, and then the course arc, or what we're doing. These are 4 sessions. So the purpose of the Empathy Circle is to help create a culture of empathy. There are 3 learning outcomes that we hope that you take away from this training. 1, we hope that you understand and become familiar with the goals, values, and the core structure of the Empathy Circle so that you can guide others through the experience. And I just need to say, our values are sort of a work in progress, and just to let you know that that's occurring. So second, and just as important, is that the participants will feel confident and comfortable in beginning to facilitate, that you'll actually be comfortable doing that. And finally, we hope that you leave this training having established strong bonds with each other and continue to support each other with your training and growth. Although this training is short, we view the practice of listening and facilitating as a lifelong practice akin to like physical exercise. Get your empathy circle fix, you know, kind of limber up. So that's the aspirational goals and of the course. The course arc in the first session goal is to review the empathy circle practice and to be introduced to some of the core values of a culture of empathy, and also to experience the benefits of the practice. In other words, to participate in the circles themselves. We feel that this is a real essential to the training. The second class will be preparatory for facilitation. The next 3 classes actually will be a series of practicums, essentially, of facilitating. We hope to, you know, go through that. And then also at the end and throughout, we hope that you will reflect on your learning practice so that you can give us feedback, and then we can improve the course as we go on. And so that's the general gist of what we're going to do and how we're going to try to do it. And I will turn this over to Lou right now, who will talk about the empathy and the core values. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Sure.
I just want to say after the introductions that I'm so moved to be here with all of you, to get to meet you a little bit and to have such an amazing group with so much experience and capacity. It's really very inspired by that. So thank you all for being here. Okay, so as Bill said, I'm gonna paste into the chat. Bill said that part of the purpose of doing empathy circle practice is to help create a culture of empathy. I would add to that, it really focuses on creating mutual understanding. So helping people understand themselves actually and one another. I'd say that's one of the results of the empathy circle practice. But it is also to promote, or it is set inside of this thing we call a culture of empathy, that Edwin likes to call a culture of empathy. And as Bill explained, we're still in the process of defining that. But I've pasted into the chat some of the values that we think are part of a culture of empathy. And at the very least, the idea is that people that join the empathy circle, that they participate with the intention of holding these things. So with the intention of coming with curiosity and openness and honesty and mutuality and inclusion and equality. And while a culture of empathy recognizes, or an empathic response recognizes, that people may not be able to do that all the time. They may not be able to get there. It's, you know, the idea is people participate with that intention. And I think as a facilitator, if you got the sense that someone actually wasn't coming with that intention, that would be something to talk to them about. Yeah, and I would say as a facilitator, if I really got the sense actually that someone's intention was not to participate, you know, was not in alignment with these things, then I might not let them participate. I probably would talk with them first and empathize with whatever is present in them, because that process is part of what maybe helps people shift, you know, or be open to participating in a different way. But if I was with a group of people and a person wasn't interested in talking or shifting or anything, they were just there for some other purpose, then I might say to them, well, it sounds like you want something else, you know, not what we're here to do. So I'll talk for just a second about a few of these. And actually the topic of the empathy circle we're going to do today is this, values of culture of empathy. So you'll have more time to explore this in your circles. But so let me see if there's anything actually I want to say about this. So I think a really important one is mutuality. So there are several pieces of the empathy circle structure that create mutuality, specifically create mutuality. So the idea that each person takes a turn speaking and reflecting, and that the turns are timed, that kind of builds in some structural mutuality. And when I'm doing an empathy circle for the first time, I often point out to people that, you know, what happens in a normal conversation, if you just get together with a group of people and have a normal conversation, some people talk a lot and other people don't talk at all. And the people who are very verbal usually wind up dominating the conversation, and that the empathy circle is intended to be something different than that. So that's mutuality. Yeah, and then another one that's maybe not so obvious is equality, which is that there is no hierarchy in the circle. And so whatever relationships there might be outside the circle of the participants, that in the circle everyone participates as an equal, and that's reinforced by the mutuality also. But so the goal is for people to participate as just as a person, just as a human being, not as whatever their role is in life. And one of the attributes of the empathy circle is that the facilitator is also a participant. So this was something that was unusual for me because I've done lots of facilitation, and I kind of questioned it when I first got involved with empathy circle practice. So the facilitator is a participant, and you take a turn speaking, and you whatever. And yes, and that has turned out to be a really valuable thing. I think it's really unique, and I think it's really important. And so the facilitator is just someone with a little more experience with the practice and helps people stick to it, because our normal habits of communication and thinking doesn't involve some of this culture of empathy stuff, like curiosity and openness and mutuality. It's not what we're generally conscious of. And so the facilitator has a little more experience that it can help people stay on track. So I think that's enough. I don't know if Bill, there's anything you want to add to what I've said? You're muted, Bill.
No, I think you set the stage really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, can I just add one? On the website I put a link. There's a link to the course website and the core values there. We have empathy there as well, and there's different definitions of empathy. You know, people look at it differently. We're really basing ours on the work of Carl Rogers, and there's a little video clip there of him and how he defines empathy, just so and that's sort of core to the culture too, is that empathy.
Thanks, Edwin. Okay. Well, let me paste. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through, and basically, you know how the circle works, and you've participated. And this is just simply, you know, my approach. You'll hear throughout the course others role model how we do the introduction. And a couple things that this is again my particular approach to it, is that you have a couple of chances at the go through. So my particular approach is to be kind of sparse. The trickiest part is the listener, where you're not really responding in a normal way. So we'll see how that works when I do that. We do have a link to how to the basic empathy circle, and there are different ways. And then also I want you to know, when you do it, you also have a chance to role model it when you get into the breakout circles. So I want, when it's your turn, this is one of the things you'll be doing, is that you don't have to nail it the first time. And that's just my way. You may nail it the first time, and that would be fine. Okay. All right. So the empathy circle has 4 roles. There's the speaker, there's the active listener, the silent listeners, and the facilitators. It's the facilitator's job to just keep time, and also to kind of keep us into the practice. If the facilitator makes a correction, it's not criticism of you or your ideas, but it's just simply to try to keep you in the practice. This is a bit different, and there's a period of adjustment. It's not a judgment. So the speaker speaks. They have generally, we're going to go 5 minutes, I think, here. Later on in the course, we might do shorter times so that more people have a chance to facilitate. But we'll go 5 minutes, I think, today. And so you get a chance to speak about whatever the topic is, or whatever's on your mind for 5 minutes, and you speak and you pick an active listener. And this is the tricky part. As an active listener, it's different. We try to reflect what the speaker's saying, the words, feelings, and values of the speaker as purely as possible. Without asking questions, judgments, even saying, oh, know how you feel or whatever, not a response, just simply trying to reflect what we're hearing from the speaker. You can ask the speaker to stop, also kind of out of context turn here. The speaker can also, it's good to help the listener if you can stop periodically, let them reflect. But if you're the active listener and you feel overwhelmed, it's okay to ask for a pause, reflect, and then go on. And then the passive listeners' jobs are to basically just listen and to, I think that there's a gestalt, as one might say. There's some things that are going on. And so, but the passive listeners are just kind of, following the conversation and seeing what happens when it's their turn. Once the speaker speaks, the active listener then becomes the speaker, the next speaker, and then they pick one of the passive listeners as the active listener, and so on and so forth. And that is pretty much a quick outline. Lou, Edwin, anything else that you feel that I've missed?
No, that's pretty good.
Nope. Okay. All right. So without, as they say, further ado, we are going to go into breakout rooms. And so the topic is, which of the core values resonated with you? What value would you add, maybe, or take away, whatever? Or if there's something else, I know it's the election day here in the United States. If something's really, eating at you and you want to talk about it, it's always okay to talk about what's ever on your mind. And just to let you know, I think that Lou mentioned, and this is something that as facilitators, we may stop from time to time to kind of transparently describe what we're doing and why, and what decisions we're making as a sort of, training aspect. Okay, anything else? I think we're ready to go. And Edwin, do you want to record all the breakout rooms? One?
I think one is enough.
Okay, so the one that you're in?
The one I'm in.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have to record. Okay, great. So I will see you in the breakout room.
Okay, just so we have an hour and a half for the circle, right? And then we'll come back for a half hour sort of debrief and follow up. There'll be 4 circles. Somebody just dropped out very last minute, so Dean will facilitate the first one. I'll be in that one. Lou, number 2, Bill, number 3, and Anne, number 4. And there'll only be 3 people in your group, Anne, so I think that's it. So yeah, and 5-minute time limit, you said?
I think so, yes. And
yeah,
but
okay, great.
Different people can,
Okay, great. Okay, here we go. Open all rooms.
All right.
See you there. Yeah. So you're facilitating, Dean?
Hello, my name is Dean. I would normally do an introduction now about the role of the facilitator and how we actually do the circles, but I understand we're all pretty au fait with the circle process. I'm just trying to get my watch to work for the timer, because normally I would use my phone as the timer, but my computer died on me, so I'm having to use my phone as the camera. So if someone else could take the time or do the time
I'll
limit.
do the time.
Thank you.
Sure.
So the topic today is, what of the sides of the empathetic circle process do we feel is the most relevant, or the one that sits best with us, especially with these times of troubles? Hopefully Being tolerant is the one I would choose, but then again, that's not my down to me at the moment. I'm just here going to role model the active listening. Who would like to start speaking first, and I'll be the active listener for them.
I just want to be clear, the topic is about the values of a culture of empathy. So, what values maybe resonate for you, or just any thoughts about what values make up a culture of empathy. So, and I'll keep time.
Karen, Anita, who would like to start speaking?
I don't mind going first.
Okay, cool.
Okay, Anita then.
Okay. And I'll choose Karen as a listener, or does that mean that you, Dean, are listening? Remind me.
No, you can choose who you want.
Okay.
Karen's quite used to reflecting, so we're all quite experienced at reflecting in here, so we don't need to role model it.
Okay. All right. So I'll choose Karen. Yeah, great. So what is alive for me when we're talking about the values of the Circle for Empathy is to do sort of a dive on the framing of a circle of empathy with the circle being the metaphor. And I learned not too long ago from another empathy scholar about how through her work on Islamic art, she came to appreciate how big and important the circle can be as a metaphor for empathy.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that what's live for you at the moment around the values of empathy circles is how it's framed, particularly around the metaphor of a circle. And there's someone from an Islamic practice that talks about the importance of the metaphor of a circle and how powerful that is in the process. Sorry about my computer pinging.
She shared with me that all geometric shapes, triangles, rectangles, ones that don't even have a name, when they're stretched out, all get stretched out into the shape of a circle. So a circle contains everything that, that exists in material shape. Material form. And what's really, so that was one thing, that the circle contains everything. The second thing was that the circle is made up of an infinite number of points along the circumference. So if we think about humans on the planet, we are all on the circumference of the circle, but we all see to the epicenter from a different perspective. So we all have like our own lived experience and different way of seeing things. But the third thing is we're all equidistant to the center, to source, to God, to, life force. And I'm just enthralled by all of that.
So I'm hearing some really interesting descriptions of why the circle is particularly useful and important as a metaphor. First of all, the fact that if you take any shape and stretch it, fascinatingly, they all sort of become a circle, or they're all contained within a circle. The second thing is that there's an infinite number of points around a circle. Well, it's probably not infinite, but yeah. And if we think of human beings as sitting around that circle, we're all sort of looking from that edge to the center, and we're all equidistant from that center as well. So it's got some really powerful and exciting ways of conceptualizing empathy and the whole circle metaphor.
So back to the values of the circle, I see that the word circle appears in a few of the explanations. Equality, there is no hierarchy in a circle. So again, that metaphor is so beautiful. And then in the mutuality in the circle, mutuality means that everyone gets an equal chance to be heard. So I just consistently connect that circle metaphor to the work of empathic listening and what we do through the empathy circles. So that's all I wanted to share.
Cool. So going back to the values and the power of that metaphor of circles kind of comes through in so many of them in terms of equality and mutuality and it just sort of touches on so many aspects and has a really, so it's got a really powerful feel, comes through very strongly. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel very heard.
Okay, pleasure. That's very interesting. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I guess I am. I'm a speaker, so I'll choose. So Dean, will you listen?
With pleasure, Karen.
Okay. Yeah, I love what Anita just shared there. I thought it was, I just learned quite a lot in that 5 minutes, which was great. And yeah, I love the picture of it, the visual aspect of it. I thought it's very powerful and something really useful to engage with people and to kind of make that visual connection. I thought was very good.
So I hear you resonating with the message that you got from Anita, and about the powerful image that was left with you of the circle, and how it's all inclusive.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be something I can really use in future. It's something I think I'll always remember, which is great. And in terms of the values, I mean, I love them all. I'm trying to think of the one that I would pick, and I think the one that sticks out for me, partly because of a previous empathy circle where there were people involved that had sort of very quite intellectual titles, if you like, and I thought, oh wow, this is going to be sort of really hard-hitting kind of intellectual conversation, and it was. But what I found in the end, as we were going deeper, is that the human quality really came out. So that thing of no hierarchy and people just coming as people really sort of came through. I'll pause there.
Okay, so the one you like the most is the lack of hierarchy, or all-inclusiveness, because you were given this in a previous circle when you were working with some quite intellectual heavyweights, but yet what actually came out was the humanity rather than the scholastic power. So this conveyed the fact that in the empathy circle process, it all comes down to I've forgotten the word.
Yeah, humanity. Yeah, humanity.
That's the one. Yes, the one. That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. And I think the other value that I think resonates, as I said, they all do, but I think honesty, I think, is something that's I was going to say lacking in some respects, just in terms of, like Facebook and things, people just sort of post what they want people to see, and we're always thinking about, me included, how I come across and that sort of thing. And I think just having that space and that time to get really honest is really special.
So you're reiterating it again that you like all of the values, but honesty is the one that stands out, especially in the, sorry to use the term, clickbait culture we live in, whereby people are so busy trying to portray a certain side of themselves. In the circle, we are honest rather than putting forward this false side to ourselves.
Yeah.
On social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think those two, that humanity, coming as honest human beings, is yeah, very special. And I think that's all I need to say at the moment. Thank you.
So it's the humanity and the honesty that are very important, and that's all you would like to say at the moment.
Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I feel heard. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Karen. That's Edwin.
Listening.
Can you be my reflector?
Yep.
I'm a great fan of the 2 H's. And I would add another one, humbleness. because all of them are deep, or were deep within the humanness that's allowed us to work cooperatively, but has been chiseled away by more and more shallowness, more and more clickbait, I'll use that term again, that causes people to look at something on the surface rather than what's true within them.
So you're, what I'm hearing there is that you appreciate the two H's, and there's another H, which is humility, and that people have kind of gotten into like clickbait, kind of more superficial instead of kind of deeper, being deeper, humility, being deeper. There's a word I'm looking for. Not quite sure.
Humility is a good way of describing it, where we must be humble, because if we're not humble, then we're not being honest. And it's the lack of honesty that's one of the deep schisms that's being used to entrench division and divide and conquer mentality of us and them. It's not worked, because it's worked very well for those that have devised this culture of us and them, but it's not worked for our environment and our planet, because look what's happening to it. We need to find a new way of working, and I'm hoping that the empathic listening process is a way of actually getting to hear what other people have to say, rather than combatively challenge what other people have to say.
So you're saying that people are fighting with each other, especially like with environmental issues. There's just kind of strife and conflict. And what I'm hearing is you see that humility is needed, that people need to be more humble, and that maybe the empathy circle or the empathic listening is one way to have that humility of being willing to listen to others.
Yeah, because we're taught to be adversarial, it's us and them and divide and conquer, and oh, you must get ahead. What's this ahead business? If someone's getting ahead, then someone's getting left behind. I've never liked this concept of leaving someone behind. We mustn't leave anyone behind. We must be open to everyone, warts and all, and hopefully by being so open and honest with them and humble with them, they will actually learn to open up and be humble too.
So by modeling humility, that others will see that and have that humility. And it's a different approach than competition, just trying to get ahead, that there's something kind of deeper, maybe deeper connection around that humility that happens, and something you value.
Yeah, people haven't been taught humility. People have been taught adversarial, combative skills. It's all part of our educational system and all part of the career path and getting ahead. Well, what about those you left behind? That's the majority of people that get left behind, and it's not good to have all these people feeling that they've failed. I mean, look what it's doing to the mental health situation in all the countries of the so-called advanced Western world. There's so much mental health problems because people are feeling this dishonesty and this isolationism that's just toxic.
So you're saying that so the competitive model that you feel that we're taught in the schools, in society, and it leaves people behind, and it's just very toxic. And you just see sound like you're kind of upset with that model of society.
I have learned to be calm about my enraged anger and passion. I used to scream and shout, which is no surprise to everyone, but all it did was allow people to switch off to me. I'm trying to learn to whisper now, because when you whisper, someone actually has to concentrate to hear what you say, whereas if you shout, people just go, oh no, yeah, or the rise roll. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So you see this competitive model, you actually have some anger and rage. You used to have more anger and rage about it, but you found that turned people off. So now you're trying to be kind of more calm, more whispering with this approach to kind of bring people to, kind of change, to move more towards a humble and empathic way of being.
Thank you, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Speak to Anita. Thanks. Yeah, so with the, talking about the values of a culture of empathy, I've been developing like the empathy circle, but I think it's important to have it fit within a larger vision, right? So like sort of cultural, societal vision. So that's really what that culture of empathy is it's not just, hey, here's this technique, but it really fits within a larger vision of society. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that when it comes to the values of the circle of empathy, they work within that frame, but really the values can be seen more broadly across the entire aim of developing a culture of empathy. It means tapping into all of those values the same way.
Yeah, and then with the empathy circle sort of models, it's sort of maybe like a fractal, right? It's like, or the fractal kind of represents, you kind of look at it, just kind of represents. So I kind of see the empathy circle, what we're doing here is like everyone gets a chance to speak, everyone gets a chance to feel heard to their satisfaction. And that sort of models the, the broader culture of empathy, and it's sort of a stepping stone, a brick in, or whatever, something to build that culture.
Yeah, so the empathy circle is a bit like a fractal of the bigger project of the building a culture of empathy, because through the practice of empathy circles, everyone feels heard, everyone has the chance to be fully expressed, and that's what we want at the larger scale.
Yeah, and I wonder what's sort of the minimal viable values of that? Like, what's the minimum we need here in the empathy circle? It's like, do I have to care about you? Not, you can bring people who really hate each other into a circle, totally don't care about each other. So you don't have to care in a sense, right? You can just like, you're an asshole, you're an asshole. So, care, maybe isn't totally necessary for the empathy circle to, get started as a first step.
Yeah, so you're questioning whether or not there's a minimal viable thing that the empathy circle could just kind of like, its baseline could be built on, where you could even bring people from polar opposites who don't care about one another, say you're an asshole, in response to something that they disagree with. But at the same time, the empathy circle would still provide them an opportunity to express some empathy that could build up a culture of empathy.
And yeah, and there was their curiosity. It's like, I don't care about you, right? Do we have to have curiosity in the empathy circle? In a sense, you don't, because all you got to do is listen to the other person to their satisfaction. So you don't even have to, curiosity is nice, but you don't even have to have curiosity. It's just, you have to be able to listen to the other person to their satisfaction. I'm not curious what you have to say, but I'll hear what you have to say.
Yeah, the practice of the empathy circle requires listening so that you can reflect back what you're hearing to the satisfaction of the speaker. But, if you were not in that space, you wouldn't necessarily even care or be curious about their message or whatever there's on their mind. But the practice of the empathy circle requires that listening.
Yeah. And then I wonder about some of the other, like equality. Like I could say, hey, I feel superior to you. I know I'm superior to you. But with the basic rules, I have to reflect back my understanding of what you said to your satisfaction. We do it with each other. So it's kind of like the structure kind of helps move people in the direction of equality towards that caring. And because after time, it sort of evolves when people just start hearing each other, that those values sort of emerge eventually. Given enough time is my experience.
So people who are not in the empathy circle may come in with a whole set of power dynamics and judgments, and yet the structure of the empathy circle kind of, funnels them into a space where they feel this sense of equality emerge. And so over time, you know, the values of the empathy circle show up, you know, organically.
Yeah, the deeper ones. It's like, so I'm just really wondering, what are those core, the minimal values that are sort of needed to bring people into an empathy circle, you know, to hold it. So I'm just kind of, you know, this is just kind of at the edge of my thought here, just contemplating those ideas.
Yeah, so you're flirting with, you know, what of those values are the most important as a minimum requirement to fully engage with the empathy circle? Can those values that have been identified be distilled even further?
Exactly. I feel fully heard. That was my time too.
Dean.
Yeah, certainly anything.
I teach a leadership class. It's an undergraduate leadership class. And one of the readings that I assign for a week that we talk about collaborative leadership as a topic is about the 5 intelligences that we all have. So we've been programmed in our society to really devote most of our intelligence to our cognitive intelligence, but there are other intelligences we can tap into.
So you teach a leadership class, and one of the things you introduce the students to is the 5 ways of intelligence, and the one that we're most developed at the moment is cognitive.
And students don't even realize that they're engaging in intuitive intelligence, spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and I feel like the empathy circle also provides a huge opening to flex the muscles of our alternative forms of intelligence.
So you mentioned some of the other forms of intelligence. There was spiritual intelligence, there was emotional intelligence, there was
intuitive,
thank you, intuitive intelligence. And the empathy circle flexes those muscles without people even realizing it.
And it feels like such a gift to listen with the quality of listening that is required by the empathy circle, because it is so rare, and it is just so much easier to grow fond of people, regardless of, you know so little, and I'm already fond of you all. I'm deeply fond of you. It's really lovely.
So actually the process of active listening allows you to develop this connection with people, a fondness for people, even though you don't know anything about them, and it's a very short time that you've interacted with them.
Yeah, and I think it's tapping in on some form of intelligence that knows that we're all interconnected, we're all part of the circle of life. And so it defies ideology, defies lived experience. It just allows you to feel in resonance with other human beings.
So this process allows you to actually connect with this deep understanding that we are all connected, and we are all part of one, and we are all human beings.
Yeah, and that's what I think empathy, the practice of empathizing, is such a spiritual manifestation.
So the process of the circle work is actually a very spiritual manifestation.
Thank you. I feel very heard.
Okay, Karen.
listening.
Wow, that was lovely. I do love, I am a big fan of We Are All One. One race, one blood, one planet, one breath. We are ourselves, contemplating ourselves, and yet we are a fractal of ourselves. There is this macro and micro complexity.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you really sort of touched, I guess, by what Anita was saying, because you really resonate the whole concept of oneness in all sorts of ways, in every aspect of human life, but also the micro and macro and how potentially they reflect one another, I guess. I've just added that bit, I realised, but yeah.
I take it beyond the human. I think that just to think we're all one human is very limiting, because when I look at the beauty of a tree or a blade of grass, if I look at it with enough empathy and feel it and see it, resonate with it, it allows me to be enriched by it in a way that, unless you can actually try the practice yourself, you'll never understand. You can talk about it, intellectualize it, but the intellect is a very tiny part of what actually it truly is to resonate with something else.
Yeah, so I think I used the word humanity. So taking it beyond that, it's beyond just humanness or the people, but all of nature and connecting with all of life, and seeing that it's without that we don't even really exist. It's all interconnected really profoundly.
I mean, we are blessed beyond all measures to be living in this time where we can interconnect across continents, where we can visualize galaxies and quasars and neutron stars and think about the greater circle of the cosmos. We're just so blessed, yet we seem to feel so isolated. This is a great dichotomy. And why is there this isolation when we have so much at our fingertips?
So just reflecting on that kind of dichotomy and paradox of us being so blessed and with so much knowledge and ability to grasp so much about the cosmos, and yet feeling I guess isolated and depression and all of these things happening at the same time, when there's so much to be grateful for and so much wonder in the world.
I'll tell you why. It's because we're imbalanced. Our intellect is huge, but our spirit is absolutely tiny. We need to grow the spiritual side or animistic side or non-rational side or cultural subconscious side, call it whatever you want. We need to regrow these connections we used to have that have shrunk. And doing the circle work is painful at first because it's this new bud we're trying to grow and it hurts as it's growing. But after practice and with using this muscle again and again, it becomes a joy. It becomes a wonder to behold.
So the answer to that kind of paradox and dichotomy is the fact that we're out of balance, and we overly emphasize our cognitive element, and we've diminished the spirit part of ourselves, which is actually the greater part of ourselves. So therefore we're going around quite sort of diminished beings, and you're seeing empathy circles as a way of exercising that muscle again to really get back in touch with that spiritual connected side of us. And yeah, it might feel a bit hard at first, but with practice the beauty of it will emerge.
It's like weightlifting for the soul.
Nice. It's like weightlifting for the soul. I like that. I'm not
Thank you,
supposed
Karen. I feel fully heard.
Okay, pleasure. Yeah, I found it really hard not to make little comments like, oh, don't give feedback. Forgot. Okay, Edwin.
Listening.
Yeah, sorry about my. It seems like every time I take my mute button off, I get messages popping up.
Okay, having every time you turn your mute button off, you're getting these little messages. I'm hearing. Maybe you're feeling a little self-conscious about that.
Yeah, I'm loving this conversation. And everything that someone said, it's like, oh, I want to delve into that, and I want to delve into that, I want to delve into that. I'll pause there and choose one up to delve into.
Yeah, so you're really appreciating the conversation, and there's things you want to build on from what each person has said. So you're just going to give it a little bit of thought which one to jump in on.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought when you were talking, Edwin, about the values and that kind of, you had to distill it down to the core ones, and something I'd been learning about recently. It's a free course called Open Mind. It's a very short course, but quite powerful. And there's a bit in there about how our morals are formed, like different moral matrices that we have built on certain values, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, so there's a course that you're finding very interesting that addresses how we form our morals and values. You just find that interesting.
Yeah, and there's 5 that they've. I'm sure there's more, but the 5 that they discuss are caring, because you mentioned caring, authority, loyalty, liberty, and sanctity. And we put different weight on those. And what the very interesting thing that they discovered was that the left and right, particularly it was taking an American population of the sort of Democrats and Republicans, but they tended to have very liberal and conservative rather than Democrat and Republican. There was a very consistent sort of pattern of difference in their morals. And it wasn't that, and I thought it was very interesting in terms of, sorry, I should pause, but very interesting in terms of understanding those for empathy purposes.
So what they lay out is 5 core values, and that they say that liberals and conservatives value those sort of differently, and you just find that sort of interesting that that people can have those, tend to, as a group, kind of value those 5 differently.
Yeah, and it was like there was a really consistent pattern coming through. I think for the liberals, it was mainly around caring and liberty, I think, and authority and loyalty and sanctity were more the conservatives. But it was, consistent around a huge number of populations. And I was kind of musing on how that kind of fits with these values, and in terms of whether there might be some differences, different weightings for different groups, perhaps.
So with this model of these 5 values and how conservatives and liberals sort of value them differently, you're wondering how this relates to the empathy circle and or the culture of empathy, and sort of how it relates, and if people have, maybe how those values overlap. Maybe is that with those, and how they sort of relate. Really, kind of just speculating or musing on that.
Yeah, you've reflected that well. And just touching on the other conversations, that when Anita speaks again, I'm very curious about the 5th intelligence, because she mentioned the cognitive, spiritual, emotional, and intuitive. And I think they should add those 5. So that's just a little throw in there for Anita when she's speaking.
Yeah, so you have your curiosity is kind of piqued by Anita, what this 5th characteristic is, and so sounds like you're hoping she'll address that when it's her turn.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And also what Dean was saying, you know, the adversarial model of society that we have and needing that spiritual, oh, lovely cat. Yeah, needing to build that spiritual side of us again and bring that back to the fore. It's very powerful.
Yeah, so you're kind of building on what Dean said too about fostering more spirituality versus a competition. So it's trying to build on what other people have been saying here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
I feel fully heard.
Then I'll speak back to you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, those models of what conservatives and liberals value, I've seen that before. There was George Lakoff, he's a linguist, and he had talked about that too, that that the liberals and conservatives have a different sort of family structure. You know, one is more authoritarian, strict father, and the other is more empathic is what he was saying. So there's a lot of these different models out there, and you know, trying to match them all together and compare them is kind of interesting.
Yeah, so just reflecting back on the conversation about the different value models, you've come across quite a few of them over in your experience. And there's one, Lakoff, I think the name was.
George Lakoff.
Who's looked at how different values have come about as a result of, say, family interactions or family can't think of the word.
What are the values again? The values that he's saying that's actually people who are in conservative have more of a strict, he calls it strict father, basically it's more authority based, whereas liberals, he's saying, is more empathic, is based on sort of empathy.
Yeah, so it's just clarifying that family structures often have an impact on the values that people end up having. So an authoritarian type family might end up having different values from a more liberal pattern family.
Yeah, and I had, so when I was starting my work on empathy, you know, I read some of his work, thought, oh, okay, you know, he had a lot of interesting things to say about empathy and so forth. But then when I really started digging into kind of the liberal, you know, the political left and right, I didn't find that it held up, because I was finding there's sort of a lack of empathy on both sides. Like we have the competition, you know, that Dean's talking about between the Democrats and the Republicans, and they're both sort of locked into that competition. You know, they're both. So it's not like the Democrats or the left is saying, hey, we're going to sit down and have an empathic dialogue. They're locked into the name calling, into the battle, into the competition for power. So yeah, I find that just that model that he mentioned didn't quite fit anymore. So I'm trying to make sense of it.
Okay, so I'm hearing that when you delve deeper into looking at that model and reflecting on it and seeing it in your experience, it didn't really hold up. And there was something that kind of superseded all of that, which was basically the competition and adversarial aspect, and to overshadow all the potential differences there might be. They got locked into that kind of battle, and
yeah, and it seemed like the sort of the center left was is more open to these empathic dialogues. The farther left you go, it's like the more less open they are. It's like, hey, we're not going to talk to you, we're right. You know, the self-righteousness, the judgment, you name it. It's like the blocks to empathy are you know, quite intense. So yeah.
So you found that as you went towards left of center, people were open to empathy circles, but as it got further left and more extreme, the views got more extreme. They were not so interested in having empathy circles. They felt they were right. They were more adamant about their position and less open to to being part of
Yeah.
a dialogue.
Less dialogic, exactly. It's amazing. And so, yeah, so trying to, create those models, the left-right model. I don't know, like I'm at the point now I'm just, I want to get this training set up. And then once this COVID stuff is over, go set up the empathy tent in front of the White House and the Congress and demand that the politicians do empathy circles. that's where I am now.
Yeah, so I find it quite curious that this kind of these positions are held so strongly, and you'd really like to really develop that culture of empathy. And as soon as possible, as soon as COVID is lifted, get a tent in front of the White House and really start to engage in these conversations and overcome these blocks that you just find.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, my congressman has agreed to take part in an empathy circle in January with Republicans. And the topic is going to be, how do we bridge the divide? So I want to do this online to get the politicians and involved.
Cool. So you've got a meeting with your congressman in January to have a meeting with the Republicans. Is that what you said?
With Republicans. He's already agreed. He's going to take part in an empathy circle with Republicans. So to model, how to talk with each other. So
great. So he's agreed to take part in a meeting in January with Republicans and really model this process, which you're quite excited about.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks.
Welcome. Anita, will you listen to me? Okay. So it'll be your time to speak next, then I'll find out about that fifth one. Yeah. I love these times of pause. I think in every empathy circle, I have a moment where I think, wow, I can just sit here and just collect my thoughts and not have to, be, that kind of that skipping rope thing where you think, oh God, I've got to get in quickly now. It's like, no, it's my time. So I'll pause there.
So you've got a lot of joy in recognizing that you're sitting in your empathy pause. Or your moment of pause where you don't have to react or jump into the conversation. You can just savor the quiet.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, that's what Edwin was sharing about the models. Very interesting. I literally came across this morality matrix a couple of days ago, so haven't delved in. I know Edwin's bookshelves are just filled with empathy books, so yeah, he's the person to come to about all these things. But yeah, so that was very interesting to learn about his experience of how these values play out in reality.
Yeah, you're really taken by what Edwin shared. You know him to be sort of a great resource for all things empathy. If you think of his library, you also came across an interesting matrix that you haven't fully explored, but you appreciate that what he shared is a bit of a learning that you can digest and think about.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just quite excited about the connection that we have in this group and in the wider cohort as well, in terms of the experiences that people have and bring to bear. Because there was something about the leadership class that you do for undergraduates. Yeah, I think I'll pause there and let you reflect before I get into the next bit. Sorry.
So you're feeling really excited about the connection that we have on our call, but also with the wider cohort of people doing this facilitator training, and all of the different like rich experiences that we can draw from and gain from one another as we share.
Yeah.
And there was something about my undergraduate leadership class that you wanted to get into.
So my brain was ticking on that. It's an area that I'm really excited about, that I think you mentioned, was young people learning about these kind of practices, and touching again on what Dean was saying about the spiritual side. Yeah, that's really kind of, it's an area that I feel quite passionate about, and I'm getting into it in my own way in terms of what I know and the platform that I have. But ultimately, that's the kind of goal, is that kind of richness of education that needs to be had, and a change in the whole sort of paradigm of education, and what young people learn and how they learn it is something that I'm feeling very passionate about at the moment.
Yeah, so you're getting really jazzed by all of the opportunity that exists to bring some of this consciousness or empathy building for younger people. You're very passionate about kind of connecting with a younger generation, and how through education some of these skills and competencies can be developed in your own way with your platform.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the way that I'm coming at it that excites me is really about the systems and the structures. So although I'm not in there with the children in the schools, it's, I'm still thinking about how to engage parents and teachers in looking at, and obviously the students as well, everyone engaged in how we look at the whole system of education and the way it's structured. So that's that kind of macro level meta-analysis, if you like, is what's really exciting me. But I realise that it might not be the easiest way to engage people. So I'm having to think, okay, that's the content that excites me, but I have to think about the process as well of how to kind of bring that into reality, into practice.
Yeah, so you're acknowledging that your place, can I wrap up, Edwin? Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you wrap up. Give a final reflection. Okay. Sure.
So your space and your platform is not in the classroom directly with the kids, but you look at education from the perspective of the structures and the system of education at a higher macro level, and you're really excited about the content of how you can make changes in the systems and in the structure, but you have to find a way to translate that into something where people will be as excited about that as you are.
Cool, lovely. Yeah, thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
So Edwin?
Listening?
Yeah. I'll start by saying I've put 2 attachments in the chat box, so you can not only see a snapshot of the 5 intelligences, but also a full reading. So enjoy that. And I just also want to just say that I'd love to chat with Karen offline, because it seems like we have a lot in common. I'm about to start in a whole different direction, Edwin, so I'll just let you reflect that back quick.
Okay, so you just put some links in there for the 5 intelligences, and really seeing some resonant commonality with Karen. I'd like to connect with her to discuss, and you're off on a different topic now.
So what has come up for me listening to how this conversation has evolved is I have a vision of the Dalai Lama who giggles, and he just embodies the sense of joy and levity, even though I know he's, deeply engaged in 4 or 5 hours of mindfulness practices a day. Yes.
Yeah, so you're just thinking of the Dalai Lama who does all this meditation, mindfulness meditation, but he's sort of a giggler. So.
And I am all of a sudden fiercely curious about how the work of the empathy circles that you have championed over the last few years, Edwin, has changed you. And I wonder if you have become a profoundly more kind person, and if you have felt more equanimity in your day-to-day life and in your relationships.
Yeah, so you're wondering what the effect is of doing so many empathy circles for so long. What kind of a, you know, what's been sort of the visceral or the effect in me? So just sort of sitting with that curiosity. Has it made me have more equanimity, more groundedness, or, you know, what's really been the effect that it's had?
Yeah, so if you wanted to respond to that when it's your turn, I'd be open to that too.
Yeah, you're hoping I respond to it if I would like to. I have a chance instead of just reflecting back.
Yeah. I remember when I came across material in my doctoral research about neuroplasticity, that we can become more empathic with empathic behavior and empathic thoughts. When I discovered that literature, I started to experiment with what it would mean to practice more empathy on a daily basis.
Yeah, so when you're studying, doing the sort of the academic studies of empathy, you're just kind of like wondering what would the effect be of sort of doing a practice? What effect it would have on, sounds like what effect it would have on you?
And one experiment really sticks out in my memory. I was in a long lineup at a FedEx office at the holiday season. Like, this is more than 10 years ago, before we had mobile phones to distract us when we're like waiting for 30 minutes to get up to the counter. And when I finally did, I was probably in a terrible mood. And the woman who greeted me was just like really nasty. And I remember wanting to respond, and then just a little, I don't know, flash of, oh, here's an opportunity to practice empathy. I experimented with the moment by just like literally shifting gears and asking her the question, are you okay?
So an example, it sounds like it really stood out for you as being in a line, and then when you finally got to the person in the line, they were in a really crabby mood, and at first sounded like you wanted to sort of maybe fight back, but then you just kind of took a step back and just checked, you know, how are you doing? Are you okay?
And when she realized that I was sincere and that I wasn't being bitchy about the question, she started to cry. Wow. And told me that she was working double shifts and that her child at home was sick and that she hadn't had a lunch break and it was already 3 p.m. and she was hungry. And she cried for a few minutes. I gave her space for that. And then she thanked me for just letting her expunge that. And then she carried on and you know, carried out her duty with like top notch, like just, she was super delightful. And it has stayed with me as a powerful lesson that what shows up is not necessarily what's really there.
So this was a really powerful experience and a lesson that what shows up in people is not what's behind that. And for her, that crabbiness, was it really, you know, based on doing double shifts and kind of being overworked, not having a break, worry about her children or child, and then she really sounded like she really appreciated just to be able to share that with you And it was just very meaningful for you to understand that there's all this behind who people are.
Yeah, and it was a gift to me that I reflect on a lot, and I try as best as I can to be reminded of that in my day-to-day life, but it's really tough to do.
That was the time, but yeah, so that is really, you really try to stay with that awareness, and in your day-to-day life, but it's hard, it's hard to have that awareness and that space to do that sort of be that empathic.
Thank you, Edwin. I feel really heard.
Oh, yeah. Dean?
Yes, Edwin.
Yeah, so kind of the effects, that was a good question about what's the effect been. And what came up was just a memory of starting with empathy circles, doing a lot of empathy circles, and what you had mentioned, sort of it's difficult, it's almost like painful. It was almost like painful. It's like something in my brain was kind of being shut off. Maybe it's my initial judgments or my something. And it was like viscerally kind of an uncomfortable space to be in.
So when you first started your works with the empathy circle processes, you experienced this visceral pain because it was like turning a faucet off that wants to keep flowing. It was this judgment reaction that couldn't happen because there was no space for it.
And so yeah, but in time, I feel kind of more grounded from having done the empathy circles. So it's sort of like coming up to those situations like Anita's mentioning is just having more space, and then thinking in terms of reflecting. Okay, what's the person saying? Trying to hear what's sort of behind exactly what Anita was saying. Trying to hear and even sort of probe a little to reflect what is, which kind of opens up the door to people just sort of opening up to what's sort of behind that. So that's that sort of that mindset has kind of been more internalized, and yeah.
So with this continual practice, you've learned to see beyond the mask that people present to you and actually wonder why they are presenting this mask.
It's not so much a mask. I don't see that necessarily they're just presenting who they are. I mean, a piece of themselves. It's not necessarily a mask, but it's just, going deeper into it, so I don't see it as a mask. I just see it as a facet of who they are. And like, what are the other facets that are maybe behind that or deeper or more into their felt experience?
So my description of mask was totally inappropriate because actually it's not a mask. It's not something they fake. It's actually a facet of them. And you're learning to actually see the rest of them, not just that tiny facet that they're presenting.
Yeah, and have sort of a little bit of a grounding in space for kind of giving just space for that sort of that inquiry and connection.
And so having a grounding in space to allow you to actually give this time for this inquiry.
And one of those peak experiences was in my family. I tell this story a lot, that a conflict started between two family members. And instead of just, stepping in, taking one side or the other, I reflected back what both sides said. But it took a lot of sort of grounding to have the capacity to just stay present and reflect back. And it was kind of a very scary experience. But by doing so much practice, it kind of created sort of an empathic battery, reservoir of, and that can get worn down, but people don't, so it's just, it does create, like what we're doing here is sort of charging my battery, right? This is like this group is sort of like an empathy charging station. So plug in.
So yes, you were recounting the story of two of your family members that were being very hostile. Because you've worked so long in the process of the empathy circle, you've got this battery charge or this well of capacity to draw upon. And although you were very frightened and it was a very scary situation, this depth of experience and time spent in the process actually allowed you to then draw upon that, to then allow the two warring parties to be feeling that they were both heard.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the empathy, maybe a benefit of the empathy circle is that it's a place to get that charge, right? That empathy, you get kind of grounded. Like maybe we all need to be heard, and we get a space to be heard. So we're not as desperate to be heard when we go out with other people, right? It's like, well, okay, I'm not like right at the edge. I got to be heard too. It's like, I just have a little bit more capacity. I still get that, but I have a bit, just that charge, that empathy resilience is increased.
So the doing the process of the circle work has actually allowed us to then calm down this need to feel as though we need to be heard constantly, because we have had this being heard properly. So it's grounded us.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. And I got to do a bio break too. I'm going to be right back if you want to continue.
Bio break. Well, I'll be doing one after mine too as well. I need one too. So Anita, I don't think I've spoken to you yet. Right, let's take Anita. Right. Okay, well, I'm feeling slightly jealous and left out of the conversation because I didn't get to see the 5 emotional bits. I still only got 4 on my list. So you posted it in the conversation. It was just to Karen. So my emotional side is feeling slightly neglected and hurt.
You're feeling emotionally neglected and hurt, but I posted it to everyone. So it wasn't just to Karen.
No, I haven't got it. So,
really?
Yes. So anyway, enough about me. We're doing a circle process here. It's not all about my wounded pride or anything, or my male ego suffering at the outrageous inappropriateness of not having my needs met, which is totally something that I've learned to do now through the empathy circle process. I don't need to be screaming and shouting and to be noticed. I feel noticed already. And I feel like everyone was saying, fully grounded. And this grounding is giving me this opportunity to give spaces for other people's anger. I have a friend who's black. Well, I call him colored, but he says he's black. And I used the C word instead of the B word. And he for 3 hours, he screamed at me. But I had the depth of tolerance to actually then sit there and let him voice this anger at me because I'd used a word that triggered him. So it's a good process.
So you were teasing me a little bit at the beginning that this isn't about whether or not I posted to you. You have learned through the empathy circles that to be grounded and that your voice doesn't need to be front and center, and that you can let other voices take up more space. And the anecdote you use to bring that idea to life is that you got into a 3-hour conversation where it wasn't really even a conversation, where your friend was triggered by your use of the C word. He was very adamant about using the B word, but you could hold the space for him. So you've learned through the empathy circles to be grounded and give space to others to emote and communicate.
Because it showed my bias. I was totally unaware of my own biases, and to actually have that pointed out by someone else, actually what I thought was okay for someone else is not okay, was a really good experience. Okay, it was slightly intense, but I think that was what was needed to make me aware of how inappropriate some of the words that I think are totally acceptable are.
Yeah, so you are willing to own the fact that it was an intense conversation, but you're certainly grateful it happened because you had no idea that some of the words or expressions you used could actually be offensive or triggering to others. So the gift of that exchange was that you learned something from it, and that wouldn't have been possible if you had not been there to listen.
And that was because of the empathic process and learning to actually give space for others. So yeah, I owe a big debt of gratitude to this, because it's allowed me to grow in a way that I would never have grown before. Okay, sometimes growth is painful, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's beautiful and enriching and multifaceted and multidimensional, and the variety of the conversations in these circles is just phenomenal.
So you're feeling a sense of real gratitude for everything that these empathy circles have given you, not only really interesting conversations to participate in, but also you personally have grown a lot. And even though the growth sometimes has been a struggle and it hasn't been easy, it's been well worth it.
Yeah, because, and as I said to my daughter, because we actually do empathic processes in the family now, because it works so well. It has allowed my teenager, who was a turbulent teenager, to feel heard and to be a lot calmer at home. So now she's calm when she's at home, and she just, like, we're having a circle now. She calls us both together, and we have to sit down and then listen to her, then reflect her, and then we take it in turns. And it has really enabled us to connect on a deeper level as a family than we would have ever done without the process.
So you've brought the empathy circles into your home, and it's been picked up as a practice with your daughter, and I imagine your partner. And you've noticed that thanks to the practice, your daughter, who's, the word you used was, turbulent, it's calmed her down. She feels heard. You all have the chance to be fully expressed. So it's really not only helped you grow, but it's brought peace in the family.
She now wants to take the process to college and to get everyone to sit down in the college room and teach everyone how to do the circle process. So it's like a mushroom. It just keeps growing and growing, which is the true wonder of it all. And yeah, it's beautiful.
She loves it so much that she wants to also scale it out to her campus dorm and campus her college campus, and spread the joy, and it just speaks to like the potential of what these circles can bring.
Yep, thank you. I feel fully heard.
Oh, is it my turn again?
Yeah.
Karen, I'm going to go back to you, but I want to make sure that Dean gets. How is it possible? It says from me to everyone. Okay, I promise, Dean, I'm going to follow up before we hang up. Okay, to make sure that you get those.
It says to everyone on mine as well. So.
I can't find it on my phone. Oh well.
Good, because it's the phone.
Are you able to access your chat? The chat box?
But it's not there. It's just my phone. It's okay. I'll have to look it up.
Okay, or send me an email and I'll do it that way. I've just noticed that my battery is at 13%. So I was just taken away from the empathy circle for just a nanosecond. I have to recenter myself. So quite the opposite of what you experienced earlier, Karen, where your body shifted into this quiet space. I feel like I've just been jolted out of the empathy circle. So now I'm trying to recenter.
Okay, so just to reflect back, you're just recentering yourself. So opposite to me, where I was kind of in that kind of reflective mode, and getting into it, you feel like you've been a bit thrown out by some of the admin processes and battery running low and that sort of thing. So you're just recentering again, getting back into it.
What's coming up for me as an idea is not really picking up on any thread of the conversation, but is connected to the work that I'm doing now. I'm writing a book, and I have an agent in New York that is representing me. And over many months, we've worked on the book proposal. Just yesterday, he finally said, your proposal is ready. Now we're working on which sample chapter will go along with it for him to shop it around. I'm very excited. But he said, where you need to spend your attention now is to grow your platform.
Okay, so just sharing what's live for you at the moment. It might not be picking up on specific threads of our conversation, but where you're at the moment is that you've been writing a book, and you've been speaking with an agent in New York for some months, getting it to a state where it's ready. Sorry, I missed the wording of that a little bit. But just yesterday, he basically said it's now in a position to kind of take further and develop your platform to take it to the world. Sounds great, and you're very excited by that. So am I.
I'm excited to grow the platform. If the platform grows for what I would like to use as a word, pure reasons, like I want to grow the platform because I believe in the message of my book, but the feeling I sense is that he wants the platform to be grown so that I can shop it to a publisher. And the idea of becoming more popular on Twitter and more popular on Instagram and more popular on all these social media platforms is anathema to what I'm hoping to create with a community that cares about purposeful empathy. I don't want to become popular. I want the message to resonate. And so I'm struggling with this.
Yeah, so you're feeling there's a kind of conflict, I guess, of wanting the message of your book to be out there authentically, and there's this conflict with your publisher who's wanting to kind of make it popular and get it on different platforms. And so there's yeah, so you're struggling a little bit with that conflict.
Yeah, and I'm part of a writers group. Most of the people in the group are published multiple times in nonfiction, and when I was invited into the group, there was just a lot of learning. So I was told, you know, like, just listen more than you engage. And yesterday I actually asked the question, you know, so how do you grow a platform? Do you know anybody that helps grow platforms? And the feedback I got from the authors is, no, it comes from hard work, consistently putting out good quality content. And that, I value that as feedback from people who have just earned their way to a platform because of what they put out is valuable to, you know, the community. And I know that that's not going to impress my agent because he's working on commission. So he wants to sell the book for the highest price with the biggest platform. So I feel really conflicted. Again, just repeat.
Sure. So you're part of a writers group, and most of them are experienced publishers. And although for most of the time you've been sort of listening and learning, you did ask the question quite recently, you know, how did you develop your platform? And the feedback you got was that it was really just hard work of putting it out in, you know, the right places in the right way. And your publisher is, your agent is more incentivized by the commission, and there's a real conflict of, not conflict of interest, but just conflict in approach, and wondering what to do about that. And yeah.
Thanks, Karen. I feel heard.
Okay, welcome. I feel for you. So back to Edwin. Yeah.
Listening.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess just a quick kind of empathy for Anita in that position of conflict, and you know, it's one of those things that in the last few months, I talk about carrying around this soapbox with me. Like there's usually, I don't think that I've been in any conversation in the last few months that doesn't come back to this whole issue of people being incentivized by money and the way that money operates in our society and the kind of toxicness of it. And, you know, usually whenever someone describes an issue that they're having, you know, usually you can sort of boil it back down to that being one of the issues. So it's just interesting that, yeah, again, my soapbox has come out, bonk.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you have some real empathy and care for Anita and her struggle, and it's relating to a kind of a bigger issue that people who are just struggling with issues, and it has to do with, you know, having to make money and just the struggles of that, and it's quite common. You just see that coming up in a lot of struggles. And that's actually your soapbox. You're stepping on your soapbox, maybe.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I try not to be too sort of boring with my friends, to keep going back to that. I read an article recently about the dangers of going meta, it was called, which I thought was very good. It's basically, you know, someone can just say, well, you know, something about the weather, and going meta would be something about the global crisis. So I keep going meta on the economic system and the economic kind of structures in our society. So I'm really into this idea of a resource-based economy and, you know, learning about that. So it's on a bit of a crash course with it at the moment, because there's quite a lot to learn. But yeah, sorry, I've jumped around there. I'll let you reflect.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding that that you can sort of stay within a topic, sort of an experience, or you can go meta, kind of the broader cultural and maybe the issues of going meta. I wasn't quite clear, to stay more with the real experience, the more direct.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got that.
Yeah. No, you, I did jump around, so you got that really well. But basically, yeah, I was saying that I've got to be careful not to do that, and be mindful not to keep going meta on issues when someone's dealing with, you know, a real life practical issue, and just staying and empathizing with that, not shooting off into, it's the economic system we need to change, which ultimately I think we do. We need to kind of collectively focus on that, but I need to just be mindful, you know, to yeah, exactly as Dean said, kind of just calm it down a bit sometimes.
Yeah, so your natural tendency is you hear like an issue, a struggle, a problem, and you want to go meta, and you're sort of catching yourself. So I'll just stay present with what's happening here and not do that meta. So maybe instead of detaching to the bigger picture, but you have a desire to do that too. So you're kind of
yeah, exactly, because I can, in a way, I can see that that's the solution. So I keep getting drawn to, come on, guys, collectively we can, you know, can do this. This is why the education system needs to change. You know, there's a whole sort of massive paradigm shift. But again, it's how we do it sensitively, because, you know, maybe I'm a bit more on the liberal side. So of course, you know, not everyone's going to be, you know, happy with that sort of approach.
Yes, you see the benefits of going meta, because it's addressing problems at the largest systemic. Instead of just dealing with the specific problem, you can go meta and really try to solve the problems at a bigger level, more systemic level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, systemic, and that whole understanding the complexity of things really excites me. You know, I'm a real nerd, so I love it. But yeah, it's how to sort of manage that. And actually, my 13-year-old had a real sort of penny drop recently, because I'm always talking about this stuff, and he kind of thought, wow, so, you know, if we deal with the causes of things, then we don't have to keep dealing with all those symptoms. And it's like, yeah, and he kind of, yeah, he kind of got it. So he was very excited and told his friends about it, and they all thought he was very clever. So,
so you've even got your son working on this sort of meta level, looking at the systemic problem level, and it sounds like you really enjoy it. You see the effectiveness of it, and your son was picking up on it, and sounded like you felt the sense of connection there with him, that he was kind of being seen as really intelligent. But maybe the issue with the going to the meta is you're disconnecting from the specific, and maybe there's a sense of disconnection there that you're kind of concerned about. Is that disconnection that's happening maybe, and you'd like to be connected.
Yeah, I think that's a fair reflection, is making sure that the balance is right. And yeah, and I think the fact that, you know, I hear this phrase quite a lot, that if you're conscious or you're concerned about something, the chances are you're not. So if you're concerned about being a psychopath, then the chances are you're not a psychopath. Or if you're concerned about being a narcissist, then so if I'm concerned about going meta, and then I think, okay, well, maybe the fact that I'm being conscious of it means that it's not too out of whack.
So you're kind of addressing it by saying that you're concerned about losing that connection, but if you've heard that if you're concerned about something, that you're not that thing, you're not a disconnected person or something. Just like if you're worried about being a psychopath, you're probably not a psychopath or narcissist, etc. So maybe it's a bit consoling to, yeah,
exactly. Okay. I mean, I could go off in another direction, but I think that's.
I got 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah. So thank you. I feel fully heard.
Oh, okay. Speak to Dean then.
Okay, Edwin, thank you. I think we've got time for this last one.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm kind of keeping track of it. In like 1 minute, I got to send that announcement, sort of a warning. So I got sort of a little bit of distraction there, thinking of as sort of the producer. I'm kind of watching all the other groups. I'm kind of like managing all this. So it kind of distracts me from just totally, being engaged sort of more emotionally.
So you're admitting the fact that sometimes you're not actually being able to be fully engaged emotionally because you're having to keep aware of the other groups, what's going on inside them, the timings, how much time have we got left, sending out the 2-minute warning.
Yep, I feel fully heard.
Oh, that's naughty. That's naughty. That's very naughty, Edwin. Well, we have to respect the process. And now he's fully heard. I have to choose
a quick debrief. We have 3 minutes.
We have a few minutes left. I think that's a really good idea, Edwin. I have to say that's a brilliant idea. So I would just like to say, seeing as I've got the floor at the moment, wow, what a wonderful conversation that was. I have a lot to look into. I am a very big fan of neuroplasticity. I'm also a very big fan of altering the education system, because it's the same one we've had since the 1800s, for crumb's sake. And putting all these targets in. I mean, what is that neoliberalism all on about? I mean, come on. This is the future. This is education. This is not some target-driven system. I better get off my box now. Karen, I'll pass it to you.
Okay. Oh, so we're just reflecting how
we're just sharing.
Yeah, sorry,
we have 2 minutes left before we have to close. So
yeah, no, as Dean said, wow, great conversation. And yeah, still lots more I kind of want to delve into. I love that idea of the Dalai Lama. Oh, was it the Dalai Lama who giggles? Yeah, and I just thought, I hope it's all right just to reflect on something that's in my head. Just, I mean, I love the empathy circles and the fact that the reflecting back part of it. But I must admit, it's one of the areas I find probably most difficult in some respects, just because I really want to get it right, if you like, for the other person. And sometimes I possibly don't reflect it back in quite the right way. And I was thinking, oh, maybe when Anita mentioned giggles, I thought, well, maybe there's other ways we can like engage rather than language. But, you know, language is obviously a huge part, but, you know, I don't know, like other ways. But anyway, that's just another thought. But overall, great. Loved it. Over to you, Anita. Sorry. Yeah.
Hey, not at all. So there's something called laughter workshop. So like instead of going to a yoga class, you go to a laughter. Yeah, exactly. I check that out if you've never done one. That's amazing. I would really like to stay in touch with you all. So when we get back to the major room, can you send me a message with your email or your LinkedIn or something? Because yeah, I would just really like to stay in touch. I found this fascinating because we went like really deep, but then we also like I got to know you guys. Like I feel like we could all go out for dinner and talk for about 6 hours, and you know. So just thank you, thank you, Edwin, for everything you do.
We have 12 seconds, and we're going to have Empathy Buddy calls, so you'll have everybody's contact info and you get to connect. So that'll be announced kind of at the end of the next section.
Right
so
on.
see you back there.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Hope your Empathy Circle experience was good, satisfying. Now we do just a debrief to hear from people how it was. And I guess the debrief question is, how was your experience of the Empathy Circle? And how do you feel about the idea of you increasing your skills as a facilitator? And anyone can go. Anyone, whoever feels.
For me, it was really useful. I had like an aha moment in terms of like my own facilitation as well as sort of my internal processing, which is something I think I still need to process. We also had some really great tips in terms of how to manage, sort of we had a technical issue, so we kind of debriefed how we could possibly manage that, how to create space for people and manage the flow, as well as in terms of what to do in different cases of disruption. So that was really good. The other thing that I'll end by saying that we also tried, I mean, one of the things that I tried was to stay silent in my session, which was again an interesting experience for me. I think I thought I would feel lighter, but I felt like I was bearing more weight. I wonder what it was like for the other people in the group. Yeah, I mean, super educational, and it's been really good. That's all from me.
So I just want to clarify. So you experimented with just remaining silent when it was your turn to speak, seeing what that was like?
Yeah.
Yeah. And would you be willing to share what your aha was that you had?
Yes, for sure. So I realized that when you're actually in the role of an active listener, you almost like your wiring in your brain jumps to no judgment. Like the judgment part, like when you receive someone and your first like visceral response to them, judging them, you just miss that somehow. So it just almost like absorbing everything as is. And for me, that suspension was really amazing. And because we'd been doing it in a safe space, I didn't realize it till someone else reflected. So Neil, particular in this case, was reflecting, and that's when it hit me. So it was quite powerful for me.
Thank you. Who's next? Okay, Rick.
Well, I just really enjoyed the space. I was with Anne and Ben, and we had a nice, just deep. I think maybe I enjoyed not having to play the role of facilitator in that space, and it was just very nourishing. I just felt really aligned, and my heart feels good, my body feels good from the experience. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm happy to go.
Neil?
Yeah, I just get I just get really blown away by the one of the points that I made when I was talking was just how powerful the gift of 5 minutes of complete attention and unconditional positive regard is. And I think that was something that kind of hit me a little bit, that even just that 5 minutes of really giving someone your attention, or somebody giving you their complete attention, it's just such a gift. You know, it's something that we perhaps don't realize is so important these days. And we were talking in our lovely circle, by the way, so thank you so much to Bill and Rosa and Zainab for our circle. It's been a really lovely hour, some great conversation. But one of the things that really kind of just jumped out at me was just how important that space is, and holding that space for somebody and giving somebody that space. And actually, if we were considering somebody that was potentially vulnerable, they may never have been afforded that gift ever. And what a great thing for us to do, to bring that to people, bring that gift to people, because I firmly believe that giving somebody your complete attention and unconditional positive regard speaks to a person's sense of self, their self-concept, their self-esteem. It tells a person that they have value. If someone's willing to give me even a moment of their time, then that means I am of value. So just, yeah, so powerful, and a really lovely experience.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, that is something to reflect on, is why is that so rare?
Yeah.
It's really something for everyone to think about, you know, and who could I give it to? Yeah, I agree.
I can go next.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just second that. I was really eager to be the first sharer because I was feeling so much emotion. So I had really, really appreciated that I got to share first with Jamie and Nilong and Lou. And just having that 5 minutes to pour my heart out was just such a gift. I didn't need a second cry though, so I needed a second 5 minutes. But I loved our conversation. It wasn't for people sharing their particular issue. We were all on the same page and going deeper and deeper. And we ended up with one kind of topic that we spent a lot of time with, and it was just so rich. And it was an amazing conversation. And to get to know 3 other people. They're now my new friends.
Thank you, Claudia.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Ben. Yeah, I think I'd third that after Neil and Claudia. I think I'd just agree just how rich the experience is, how beautiful having these friendships are, the appreciation, the space. Yeah, I've been a big fan of Empathy Circles from day one, and every time I do it, it gets better and richer, supposedly because I'm getting more comfortable with it as well. That really helps. But yeah, it's always a really pleasurable experience. And in the pattern of thanking the group, Anita, Edwin, Dean, lovely, really enjoyed it. Thank you. It's, yeah, I'm really excited to meet everyone here, but it was a lovely circle, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Ben?
Yeah, thank you. I had a good experience. I think this was my 4th experience of empathy circling, and some of it was felt like kind of moving towards each other, but also kind of moving down, kind of somehow finding a kind of a sense of place, kind of moving in together. So we go in an hour and a half from never having met each other to really actually establishing something towards intimacy, if not intimacy itself. I'm exhausted as well, like in a very kind of nourished and refreshed way. but really working out. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Who wants to go next? Kneeling.
Yeah, and I second what everyone said about reach and healthy empathy circle that I had with my group. But also it was really wonderful to see Lou playing out a role of a facilitator. And one of the most important things that I actually learned is, as a facilitator, the best way to incorporate empathy circle values is to demonstrate that as I participate in the empathy circle with other participants. So I'm really excited for the things that I learned, and I'm looking forward to actually get better at playing a role of facilitator in empathy circles. So thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Kneeling. Dean.
As always, I really enjoy the spiral nature of the conversation. The fact that we start off as 4 individuals and then we seem to sort of end up as 1 by the end of the hour and a half. And I know it's always been a good circle when the time's gone like that. And the only reason I know the time's gone is because I keep a note of who's spoken and when they spoke and who have I spoken to. If I didn't do that, the time would just be gone. And that's showing that it's a good time. And the joy of taking this process onto others is intimidating at first, but once actually undertaken for the first time, the second time of introducing a new group to it, it becomes more and more enriching each time. So yes, thank you all. Thank you all for bringing me into this and enlightening me in this way.
Thanks, Dean. So let's see who hasn't spoken, Rosa or Anita, or either of you want to talk?
I saw Jamie just raise her hand.
Oh, and Jamie, go ahead, Jamie.
I just want to echo, I really like the use, Rick and Ben, of the word nourish, because I do feel like as social animals, like we need this belonging space. And also, as an introvert, how it can be draining, but you're still kind of buzzed. Like I would feel myself kind of buzzed after those deep interactions. So, and it's always interesting to be with a different facilitator, so you can kind of learn and glean how the different facilitators facilitate, and kind of what you can take in as your own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm happy to share. I'm kind of laughing a little bit to myself because I'm born in March and I'm a Pisces, and the only thing I know about my zodiac is that it's like 2 fish swimming in opposite directions. And I know that that's one part of me that's like the artistic, kind of intuitive, and the other one is the practical. And I laugh, on the heels of a truly profound, moving, soul enriching dialogue with Dean, Edwin, and Karen earlier. I'm now in this space of, okay, so actually, how can we scale this sucker? Like, what's the business model? Who can I talk to? Like, how can we get this out to the world? So that's my take there.
Thanks, Anita. I feel you're passionate about that.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have that much more to add. I resonate with a lot of what people have said about how nourishing it's been, and also just interesting having that time at the end to talk about the sort of the invisible facilitation that's going on all the time and how we can become more practiced at that.
Okay, so Edwin, go ahead.
Yeah, I always enjoy it's almost like a spider web or a maze, like going down all these different corners, and each one is sort of a rich sort of experience to of everybody's mind and experience. So I really, really enjoy that. I enjoy hearing the positive experiences, but I'm wondering if there's more challenges. Sometimes I get a bit suspicious if people are just saying positive things. I want to hear the negative, the challenges, like, oh, this is good, but I get bored after a while or something. I want to hear kind of the challenges of it too. So, but yeah.
Neil, you have something you want to say about that?
Yes, I do. And it's not about the circle I've just been in, it's about a circle I attended previously. And yeah, I think it's a reflection around around the energy that's in the circle. So I don't know whether or not perhaps we've got a bunch of people here right now that are so positive and passionate about empathy circles and wanting to learn about empathy circles that therefore we've all kind of come into this with gusto and really looking forward to it. And I have experienced an empathy circle that's not like this, that was to actually deal with something. And the energy can fluctuate. It can, and I think that's something that I would say that perhaps isn't all gushing, Edwin, about how amazing empathy is. Because and it's funny because it's kind of a backhanded compliment because it needed to happen, but I have experienced when it's been quite heavy and it's been quite tough, and that energy hasn't always been as upbeat as perhaps it has been today. But I think that the lesson learned for me there is that actually the energy of the circle goes where the energy of the circle needs to go. and that's the point. It sounds like today the energy of the circle's gone in a really nice way. It won't always, and I think perhaps it's just knowing that sometimes it might feel heavy.
Yeah, and I'll say to that one of the things that we will do in this class in the third and fourth sessions is give you as facilitators who are practicing an opportunity to experience some of the things that happen in circles that are, that don't follow the rules, or people don't have the capacity to reflect back or listen, or they're bringing other things, because yes, something that tends to happen in a workshop like this is that the people show up, have a fair amount of awareness, and they have a fair amount of competence in terms of listening, and you can get fooled into thinking your circles are going to be just like this, and when you go out and do them, you're going to run into people who actually will be challenged to participate in the process. And how will you respond to them as a facilitator with compassion, with empathy? And so that's something we will talk about, and something you'll have a chance to experiment with. Bill.
Yeah, and what I do for myself is I use the metaphor of a tool. The empathy circle is a wonderful tool, but a tool. And sometimes the tool is not adequate for the job, or, you need a bigger saw, or, you need the Phillips head screwdriver instead of the flathead. And so I find that's a good non-judgmental way, in that, it's a tool and not everybody's ready to use the tool or prepared for it. And that's one of the ways that I look at it. Or maybe I need to, increase my skills in order to use the tool more artfully. That's it. Thanks.
Rosa.
Something I found quite useful or interesting in our circle was when Zainab had 2 minutes of silence, and it was interesting, particularly I think doing it through Zoom. Obviously, if not, it's more difficult to be making eye contact and you're not quite sure who's looking at who. So kind of bringing in the element of silence was really interesting, and I find it quite useful in some of the sessions that I've been part of to have a bit more spaciousness, and to potentially sort of after the listener has reflected, to have even just a few breaths or a bit more spaciousness within the session, so we kind of each person can feel quite more grounded perhaps, rather than rushing so quickly from one sharing to another.
Yeah, that's something you can monitor as facilitator, and if you think it's needed, you can ask for it. You can ask people to take a minute, or yeah. Anne, you're muted.
Mute. Yeah, I really enjoyed our circle. There were only 3 of us, which is an interesting part of it, I think. And I think partly because there were only 3 of us, but also the nature of our circling, that we kind of had some pauses built in, and and acknowledged a need to just center ourselves or have a little bit of silence, and explored that a bit, which was good. It was interesting. I was asked a question about being in role or in person, and I answered it. And then when we've been back reflecting here, I've noticed that when I was facilitating earlier on in circles, I think that I carried more kind of tension or anxiety with me. So I guess, in fact, I was in role. But today, just somehow I felt it was the first time I've been involved in the facilitation training, facilitating in a training session like this. But the circle was so good, and I felt so held by the process that I was relaxed and not really feeling in role particularly.
Thanks.
That's me.
Yeah, and I'll share. I think everyone else has shared. Is that right? Has everyone had a chance to share? Okay, I think that's true. Yeah. So for me, I love the circle that we had. It was very connecting and very interesting conversation. I was moved particularly by something Neeling said. And I've heard this many times before, but there's something that about the way he said it that made me connect with it more deeply than I had before. He said, we have the illusion of separateness. Our culture produces an illusion of separateness. And I don't know, there was something about being together, and maybe it's something all of us being together, and for the purpose of connecting, actually understanding each other, the idea of, that I am a separate person, or yeah. So that just really landed with me in a way that it hadn't before. Made me want to make a film about it. I think that'd be interesting to try to make a film about showing how all the different ways in which we think of ourselves as separate, or we act as though we are separate when we're not. So I'm grateful for that. And I guess I wanted to make one comment about facilitating that relates to what people have said, and that is that as a facilitator, because you're a participant, this is one of the powerful things about facilitators being a participant in the circle. You have an influence on what happens in the circle through your participation. So the point that was just made about using silence, or taking just some silent time before you start talking, you can do that when it's your turn. You take some time to check your body, maybe meditate for a minute and then start speaking. You're demonstrating that for people. So all the different things that you do in terms of how you listen, how you reflect, the kinds of things you speak about when it's your turn, all of those demonstrate something and also help set norms for what happens in the circle. And so being conscious of that is something to do as a facilitator. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. Something else that's going to happen, or that is a feature of the training, is that we're gonna put you together. We're gonna pair you up with someone else, each of you with someone else in the training as an empathy buddy. And we're gonna ask that between now and next week's class that you have an empathy buddy call with that person, a Zoom or a phone call, and you spend, either a half an hour or an hour, but whatever it is, you split that, whatever amount of time you agree on, you split that between you, and you just provide empathy to each other. And that's just a way of connecting and a way of reflecting and processing on your learning in this class. And Edwin is going to make up the assignments and send them out to everyone. Is that right, Edwin?
Yeah, I'll send out a email with you paired up with someone. It'll be the contact info, their Facebook page if they have one, or LinkedIn, and their email, so you can connect with them. I put in the link for a little bit more information about the Empathy Buddy Call. It's part of a larger facilitator community and support. Because as a facilitator, you know, it can be pretty stressful, especially if you start going into conflict type facilitation, and you have to have support. You know, you have to have people that you can just have a little empathy buddy call, say, hey, I'm feeling stressed, and just be heard yourself. So you kind of need that empathy, you know, maybe before doing in a circle, afterwards, if before doing a mediation. And so there's kind of more about that whole, and there's links to different resources for how to get that facilitator support. And we'll be doing the empathy buddy calls between each lesson, a session, and you'll have different people to connect with too.
And another resource for facilitators is a Friday facilitator support session, which we do at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. And that's a place where you can come if you're a facilitator. Either you want to facilitate circles or you are facilitating circles. And it's a place where you can come to ask questions, bring up problems, learn more from others. You can role play situations if you want that you are afraid of or that you've experienced that were difficult for you. And so it's a outside of this class, it's the spot where ongoing support for people who are facilitating circles can come and learn and be part of a community and learn from each other and support each other.
I had one more comment. And an example is we had taken the empathy tent to do some mediation at a rally in Los Angeles. And I was doing empathy circles with the political left and right. And people were sort of getting on my case, like getting a lot of criticism. And then there was, at that point, I took a pause. I went over to another person who was there, facilitator. I said, I need empathy. I just shared for like 5-10 minutes, had that being heard, and then I was grounded again, could go back into the fray. So it's really important, just want to emphasize, you know, to get comfortable, familiar with having that support, being able to connect with others. If you're holding an empathy circle, you can have a group that you can call on, say you have a co-facilitator, you know, and just have those connections. So we're really trying to build that up. That's it.
So Bill, is there anything you want to add before we end the session?
Well, just I wanted people to think about the time, you know, how the circle gets deeper over time. And just over that time, people kind of, there's some maybe bumps or people get used to the process, and then they kind of settle in. And so just, it's good as a facilitator to be aware of that when that happens. And then just to the end, just to think about what this has done. The joke I tell is, you didn't know me 3 hours ago, but now you'd let me house sit. And I say that was true for each of you. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, so next time we will actually begin, you will begin facilitating, you will have a turn facilitating in the circle, and you will be practicing doing an introduction to the circle. So that's part of the next session, you practicing introducing the circle. And when it's your turn to facilitate in the circle, it's your choice what the topic is. So you might want to think about that in your 20 minutes that you have. What topic would you like to be the subject of your circle? So.
Yeah, and expect an email with your Empathy Buddy connection, you know, people to connect with. And also we have a survey you can kind of fill that out. There'll be a link to that. So that's something I'll be sending that out right after the class.
And if you have any issues or problems, please reach out to any of the instructors. We're all here to support you and to answer your questions. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone, for coming and
And we can get
helping us
twinkle
grow this.
fingers for our
Yes,
group
okay.
portrait. We like that. Twinkle fingers, everybody, twinkle fingers. Okay, great. It's a little
right.
dark over there, Claudia.
Okay. We'll
We
see
have
you.
the
Good luck,
twinkle
USA.
silhouette.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank
We mean
you.
it.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll see you
you.
next week.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone. It's great.
What a great group. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when people are so dedicated and they're wanting to learn, there's a clear path, direction that we're going, everyone wanting to learn. So there's kind of a real, kind of a something.
Well, and a lot of experience in a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
People, yeah.
So so we're missing one person. I can send out that person. The one person I sent didn't, respond. So I can send out to a couple of people, see if we can fill that spot. So it's, how do you feel about that? I mean, they won't have done the circle together, but then, yeah. And how was that with just?
I think it's a good idea. I think 3 is a bit small.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely the capacity, especially if it's someone who's, done several cafes and circles themselves. They have some experience.
I think that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Good.
How did it go for you, Bill?
Oh, just great. I kind of incorporated your suggestion to kind of